I'm Chad Johnston. I'm the head of growth here at Sunset Technologies, and it's my pleasure this morning to help facilitate a discussion for our first panel of the morning. And we'll be focusing on laying the groundwork and leveraging AI imaging for better dental outcomes. So joining me on stage first, we have Balaji Mahanam. Balaji is a seasoned product leader with over 16 years of experience in product management, development, and partnerships. Currently the head of product at Overjet, he has a proven track record in a variety of sectors, including online and mobile payments, financial services, CRM, and e-commerce. Next, please welcome Todd Miller. Todd, come to the stage. Todd's the founder and CEO of Jazz Imaging. Todd launched the company in 2014 to offer high-quality dental imaging sensors at competitive prices. With deep experience from Siemens and Fairchild, where he helped develop sensors for brands like Dexus and Sirona, Todd brings a sharp focus on image quality, true compatibility, and a lifetime warranty. His work continues to address key industry challenges like high costs and software limitations. And adding clinical credibility to the stage, happy to welcome Dr. John Pachontek. Dr. John, did I nail it?
Perfect.
All right. See, y'all thought I mispronounced his last name because you read it in the program. I nailed it. Dr. John is Vice President of Clinical Affairs at Smile Partners USA, overseeing clinical strategy, education, and compliance for 100 plus practices. He led the development of internal clinical data dashboards and is passionate about using technology to improve patient care and organizational performance. His focus is building systems that support providers, elevate outcomes, and ensure sustainable success in today's DSO landscape. Please give a warm welcome to our panelists this morning. All right, gentlemen, so let's just hop right into it. Why is this a good idea? Why would a DSO want to adopt AI for its radiographs or imaging as a whole? Balaji, Dr. John?
Sure, I can go first. Given the audience of CIOs and CTOs, I think I can address directly to them. I can think of three reasons. The first one being, what you want to do is establish an objective baseline, a performance baseline of your organization, right? So let's say one of the common complaints you're hearing from your providers is, hey, I'm not making enough production, enough revenue, and therefore I'm not making enough income. What you don't want to have at that point of time is a subjective conversation with them, right? You want to have a data-oriented conversation. I think Dustin talked about how radiographic is one of the kind of source truth, ground truth for everyone coming together. But one of the problems with radiograph is it's unstructured data. But this is where AI can help you convert that unstructured data into a structured data. So at an organizational level, you can then start looking at what's happening across your entire patient journey. A good example of that is a lot of customers come to us and say, our providers are complaining that they want more patients because they're not getting enough revenue in the first place, right? So what they want to look at is, among the existing patients, how much of potential diagnosis is available and how much are you actually capturing in the first place before I bring in more new patients over to you. This is where AI can pretty much help you, because one of the things at Overjet we do is when you install Overjet, we also look at radiographs up to 12 months in the historic time period to actually look at what were the total number of diagnoses that is available among your existing patients, how much of that have you captured, and how much of you are actually treatment planning in the first place, right? So it helps you have that objective conversation that's more data-oriented, and that many CIOs dream in the first place, because you can now have more data-oriented conversation with your providers rather than he said, she said kind of conversation, right? And the second thing is consistency. One of the things about dental is that when you're dealing with patients, whether it is diagnosis or case presentation, becomes very subjective. And when you're dealing with an organization of like 100, 200 clinics, how do you bring in consistency with the patient experience? Whether it is patient A or patient B, can they get a similar experience across any of their providers? How do you bring in that sort of an experience over here? This is where AI can help you, because AI on radiographs can help guide those providers to make sure that their patients get a consistent care, whether it is a small incipient decay or a non-incipient decay, nothing is missed out. But more importantly, when you're going towards a case presentation, a picture says 1,000 words, right? Rather than you sitting and trying to explain it to the patients, how about simply showing them a picture with all the AI annotations? And this can help you bring some level of consistency in the way you educate patients in the first place, right? And the third thing is, eventually everything that we do, what we do, is all about patient outcomes in the first place, right? How do you use AI to improve patient outcomes? Let's say you're going through all these treatment plans, patients are spending thousands of dollars. Can you be sure that their oral health has actually improved in the first place, or you're just spending money without improving their oral health care? And this is another area that AI can help you evaluate whether the treatments that you're proposing to the patients and they're undergoing are actually resulting in an overall improvement of their healthcare itself, right? So these are 3 reasons that I can think of why you would want to go ahead with AI in the first place.
All right, strong start. Thanks, biology. Dr. John, from your perspective.
Yeah, well, biology didn't leave me much to add. But I'll double down on the one part about consistency. One thing that we wanted as an organization is to make sure that all of our patients are getting a consistent level of good quality care. And right now, that's a very hard manual process when that data lives in an unstructured environment. Like, we've got to have doctors manually auditing charts and looking at this. How do we know where to look to see where those deficiencies are? And by using AI, number one, we know that that doctor-patient interaction is more consistent because you got AI. They've only got 5 minutes sometimes to spend with the patient. AI helps highlight the things so we don't miss things. It adds consistency there. Then at a clinical director kind of level, it adds a level of consistency because now I can aggregate massive amounts of data and radiographs and see which of my clinicians are maybe on the higher end of overdiagnosing or underdiagnosing. Those are things that I couldn't do without a long manual process. AI, by bringing that into a structured format, allows me to just process that information. The other thing that it has done, and this is just with integration and just everything kind of working together when that happens, is that the consistency of the image quality, we find that has been a lot better. When it comes through in the AI filters, it doesn't matter what sensor, what we were using. No one's being proprietary. We're getting high quality images no matter what tube head, no matter what sensor, no matter what room they're in. We're always getting a high image. So we're basically making sure our patients are getting a high level of consistent care in a way that's not just arduous, taking tons of manual clinical hours to solve. So it's really kind of closed that gap of allowing us to evaluate 114 offices at scale with a one-on-one type of interaction.
Excellent. Dr. John, how did you know that Smile Partners was ready to bring in AI, and were there any hurdles in coordinating with your IT team and getting things off the ground?
Yeah, I think the vast majority of our clinicians were eager to adopt AI. They like new technology, things like that. The problem is when change comes in and it disrupts their processes. So, I mean, we do take a one-on-one approach with each office that we are looking at converting because we're acquiring offices that start out on different PMSs, different hardware, different closed ecosystems. And so we've got to find ways to get them from where they are to where they want them to be. And so the resistance has been the change management piece, not the excitement about the technology. Right. And so we picked vendors that allow us to step that process through so it's not a sudden change shock and then they turn around just blaming IT. When we're able to do it with vendors that help us along the way, it ends up being a very smooth process.
Good. I think we all appreciate it when people don't just blame IT in the room, since we've got a lot of tech professionals here. Todd, you've had a lot of experience in implementing AI and preparing organizations from that. From your perspective, what are some of the key areas that often get overlooked?
Well, we're talking about diagnostic AI, which is what we're up here talking about primarily. The first thing you have to add, as Dr. John said, is a good image, right? And when you start looking, particularly at DSOs, at how you create a good image, you'll typically do a survey of what you have in your different practices, and you'll see that you have the full gamut of sensors, even phosphor plates, which typically don't work with AI. And you have to try to evaluate, how am I going to get from this point to a point where I get something clinically useful? And so you have to, when you start looking at your sensors, for example, you'll start to see, you got, again, variety of brands, some of which are, might even be mangled, damaged, maybe out of warranty, and you have to figure out how to get those implemented. You might see some that have gone through repairs, for example, and might be held together with duct tape, and you have to start looking at, I need to get to something that's more consistent. And so you have to start finding partners that will get you from point A to point B. And along that line, you have to find somebody who's actually, we talked about the closed ecosystem, who's actually formed a relationship with the partners and tried to get to the point where they were open to supporting you and getting you to go through the different types of software implementations. And that will be continuously changing, because it's sometimes it's pretty tough to get different sensors and different hardware working with all the software. Software's fairly easy to change, right? You can just get a new update, but when it comes to hardware, you're kind of locked in for the foreseeable future. So seeing that this environment is going to continue to change down the road. I mean, AI, like as we talked about, is just in its infancy. And so as it progresses, you need a hardware vendor also who can progress with you and adapt with you.
All right, thank you for that. So I feel like I hear a lot of discussion around standardization. Maybe we're just all OCD, maybe we're in a rush to just choose one thing, go with it, implement it, tear off the Band-Aid. What are your thoughts around standardization of AI, and what would an ideal roadmap look like?
Oh boy, I think Dustin made a good job of presenting about interoperability and openness in systems, right? See, I think standardization is more like an input, in my opinion. We need to look at what's the outcome it's going to present, right? And that's what the focus should be. Because standardization sometimes could become the gateway of vendor lock-in, where you're trying to build everything in one system and you quickly get locked in. So the real focus should be more on standardization for the purpose of interoperability, right? Because interoperability gives a level of freedom, flexibility, and choice for users, right? And you want to enforce standardization where different systems are able to interoperate with other systems, and that's the key. So from our perspective, we look at standardization of systems and their capability to interact with other systems. And that's what we think is more important, rather than trying to go and stick to a vertical stack that's all with one vendor, one system, one solution that's standardized across the org, which could, in many cases, lead you to lock-in. And once with lock-in, if there's other vendors who are innovating faster, you tend to miss out on that as well. So yeah, standardization, but look at the business outcome you want to achieve. And if that's more about interoperability and having the flexibility to go try out different systems that you want to try out, definitely bring in standardization from that perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, when it comes down to standardization, well, in the hardware world, there is no standardization. It's very expensive to start standardizing hardware. Obviously, that's, as we heard from Dustin, that's a brunt of the cost of your systems. So you have to start looking at what's the most flexible. If you get into a closed environment, you're at risk. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but some systems will actually intentionally have the ability to apply certain filters, which are fantastic filters and enhancements to images, which again, we want to get to a good image, but they'll only do it with their particular sensor. In our case, we see this a lot. In the Dexys, Carestream, Schick, EagleSoft environment, they will apply fantastic filters to their systems, but make other hardware look inferior. So you need to be careful. You want somebody who's open, will try to do the best for the customer across the board, regardless of what kind of hardware you have. And it's a philosophy. You have to pick a vendor, a partner with a philosophy to try to move into a standard, because the standardization today may not be the standardization next year. So you need to have a partner who's flexible and move with you.
Make no mistake, even in the sensors, there's Twain interface that came out as supposedly to be a standardization on how sensors can interact with imaging software, right? But our experience has been exactly opposite, because we go try to integrate within hardware, and they claim they are integrated with Twain. It's different interpretations of Twain. Every single hardware.
No two Twains are created equal. It's strange. It's supposed to be a standardization, and at the end of the day, you end up having to apply tweaks, and it's hairy. So you do want to get some direct integration to whatever imaging software you're working with. Ideally, the Twain it's challenging, because again, that's the interface that some partners choose. If you're coming with Twain, they may not know how to give the full image enhancements that that you deserve.
Yeah. So that's a great example of someone claiming they are standardized with Twain interface, but not actually being interoperable because they have their own interpretation and implementation of Twain.
Sure. And I've heard a lot of mention of pilots, especially in diagnostic AI. There's a ton of pilots going on in the room. So if we're focusing on interoperability rather than standardization, what's that like to work with vendors? Do all vendors play nicely? Do they believe in this interoperability, or do they want to see standardization? And how does that affect this transition and bringing technology in? I asked about 8 questions in there, so choose one to answer.
I mean, I'll go back to our experiences. Again, when we're acquiring a lot of offices, sometimes that we're acquiring them, they're already in a closed ecosystem. And so it's a scary part to move them from something that moves well, and we're trying to move them to a different direction. And so when we've specifically chosen what vendors we want to look at and we're working with, it's which ones, when there's a situation, don't blame the other vendor. They're like, we'll own that piece, because you got vendor A, vendor B, and there's that communication between, and both want to say it's the other one's issue. And so the vendors that we've got there, and so the temptation is to move to something that's completely integrated and closed, so no one can play that blame game. But I think it's better to choose those vendors that are willing to take ownership of that communication piece. And sometimes you'll find both of them are willing to do that, and they work together, and you have a great system. The systems we use today, and because everything is changing in AI, I hope they end up still being the best in 3, 4, 5 years, but they may not be. But as long as we're having those systems and partners that are working to own that communication gap, if we have to change who our software is or who our hardware is, we know that the other company is still going to support that change with us.
Right. Excellent.
Yeah. So if you're asking, like, do all vendors play nice? Did everyone take us for a dinner? No, only Todd did.
And that's why you're on stage together.
No, but so for example, from an AI perspective, we are integrated with roughly around 20 plus different imaging systems and 10 plus PMS systems. Mm-hmm. But still, there are so many systems that we are unable to integrate with because they've completely locked us out, right? And there's no way we can get the images from them or the data from their PMS. So that's always a constant challenge for a vendor like us. And then that forces us to look at what other ways or workarounds we can have to acquire data from them. So that's a big issue going on in the industry in general. All of a sudden, you'll see one major vendor saying, don't work with them, they're not acquiring data in the right way, right? And that's happening because, well, you lock them out and they're trying to find ways to break in. Why even lock them out in the first place? Right.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the images you've taken in the past, those images are yours. And unfortunately, you might, if you start to try to come up with a unified system, you might find that those images, they won't let you transfer them, or at least they'll charge you handsomely to try to transfer them into whatever your new platform is. And you have to look forward to the future. I mean, as Dustin said, you may change down the road, and those images you're taking now and whatever system you're going to, start to think ahead to 3-5 years down the road. I mean, you're going to possibly want to change to something else, and you need hardware, images, everything that will move with you and change as you change.
Okay. Excellent. And I want to make sure the audience knows if there's any questions that y'all have, just hold up your hand, and I'll try to remember to peek to my right, here and there throughout this. We'll have a few minutes at the end of this. So I am, this morning I ate breakfast next to Ron Korinsky, who, by the way, self-identified as a frosted mini-wheat. You can ask him about that. That was interesting. But Ron's talking about pilots. He's talking about all these great technologies, and he's saying, hey, it's all for crap if there's not ROI. So let's talk about the actual outcomes and the benefits of the projects that the three of you are kind of working on together. So, starting with Dr. John, how has this improved your outcomes at Small Partners?
I mean, from my perspective, I'm looking at it for how the patient is benefiting, and what we're seeing is increased treatment acceptance. And there's multiple reasons patients will refuse treatment: time, fear, money. But the ones we sometimes don't know is lack of urgency, lack of trust, or confusion. And AI helps fill those. They seem to understand the colors on the overlays a lot better than a doctor trying to over-technically speak typically about shades of gray. And so when we look at that and we see doctors that are using it versus doctors that aren't turning on the technology, we're seeing that case acceptance is going up. And if case acceptance is going up and we trust that our doctors are recommending good treatment, that means we are delivering better outcomes to our patients.
Yeah, so one of the things we do at our company when we think about a new product or something, an area to go into, first we try to look at what metric that a customer cares about there that we can influence and we can move, right? So when it comes to clinical AI, there are like 3 key metrics we look at. First one is what we call as in treatment planning rate, which is basically compared to when you're not using AI for radiographs, when you're using AI for radiographs, are you better at treatment planning? Are you better at diagnosis, right? That's the first thing we look at. Then the second thing we'll look at, what Dr. John alluded to, is case acceptance rate. Again, in each of these cases, we kind of put those metrics and numbers in front of customers saying, this was you for a period of 1 year before you were using, let's say, Overjet, and this is you after you were using Overjet. So we kind of show that comparison and for the customers to evaluate the ROI from it by themselves, right? The ultimate goal is, of course, to increase production, but the way we have chosen to do that is increasing the treatment planning rates and increasing the case acceptance. AI for radiographs is just a means we have taken to improve those metrics as of today, right? And in the future, we'll follow whatever technology or create new technologies that will help us continuously improve those metrics. So every time, that's how you gotta really look at AI, not to use it just because it's really nice or like, hey, it's cool or it's something new trend coming up. Does it actually implement some of your business outcomes, what those business outcomes are? And every time you talk to a vendor or anyone, you gotta first understand from them what business outcomes are you improving in the first place. And all your initiatives need to be around those metrics, whether it is establishing a baseline, tracking whether it's improving, or are there products and features that are directly contributing towards improving those metrics in the first place.
Excellent. Todd, thoughts on?
I have nothing really to add with what they've said, yeah.
I'll add something though on the case acceptance. Is a lot of people might think they have that case acceptance metric when they're looking at dental analytics or dental intelligence. The problem with those is they're not looking at the source of where the diagnostic information came from. So you could have doctors with 100% case acceptance. It's only because they're only recommending to the patient what they're actually going to sell. So looking at case acceptance on anything that is not looking at the source diagnostic data is irrelevant. And so businesses are running on that, and they have no baseline for determining what should be the denominator to calculate that formula. So without using AI, you have a useless metric at that point.
All right, very good. I see a couple of hands in the audience. Jill?
So that's where my head went, is that the devil's in the details on any of these metrics, right? So when I'm rolling out a practice management solution and they want to implement AI, I'm always asking, how am I going to know which of my hygienists are successfully using this system and which are not? And I found in some systems, well, if it's embedded, which seems fantastic, well, if it's embedded and the image comes up every single time I turn, or the AI comes on every single time I take an image, well, there's no way to know whether everyone's using it or not. So just knowing which hygienists, and I'm picking on hygienists in particular because I'm hearing from most of my groups that starting with a hygiene implementation is actually far more successful than trying to tackle the doctors. But there's that piece. But the other challenge, and this is a challenge whether it's AI imaging or not, we all create alternate treatment plans. So now how do I know that it's an actual improvement in case acceptance when maybe we just are giving more options, or frankly, we don't know how to shut down, or our teams aren't exactly rejecting those. Maybe they're deleting them, which again throws off our numbers. Getting real data on case acceptance is outrageously challenging.
Yep.
And I'd love to hear your comments then on both, how do we really see utilization, and do you offer utilization data per provider, per location, so that someone who's rolling that out knows, hey, and on the flip side, maybe it's not just who's not being successful, who's killing it, because guess what? This is my woman that I want to then become the trainer and support and make this work across locations. But can you guys share some ideas and best practices of what you've seen in groups kind of handling those two challenges?
Yeah, well, I'll just add, now that there is a baseline of diagnosis, whether you agree with AI 100% or not, it's at least a static baseline that is going to have very high precision and accuracy right on there. So now that we've got that common denominator, you can go into the individual providers and actually use the same benchmark on every single provider. Whereas, again, the old formula, they were creating their own benchmark because it was what they were treatment planning. So I can manipulate my numbers to get whatever case acceptance I want. Now they no longer have that ability, so you can go in there and get that because you've got a standard baseline. So I think there are utilization metrics and things like that that you can look into that Overjet has to see how many people are interacting with that. Other solutions are just to deeply embed it into the process of acquisition, so there isn't a choice of not using it.
Yeah. We do provide utilization metric down to individual patient appointment level. Having said that, I think it's really unfortunate that we are measuring utilization metric because the way we think about it is it's an input metric. It's a metric that's measuring your input activity, right? It's not really measuring the output or the outcome in the first place. Because anytime you put a metric and start evaluating people, they can quickly game the system, right? You're incentivizing them to game it. In this case, as you rightly pointed out, because people are getting evaluated based on utilization, whether they're using AI or not, users tend to quickly enable AI just to hit those metrics and say, yeah, see, I'm actually using this system. But what really matters is, are they using it in a meaningful way? Are they using it to actually make improvements or not? And that's where the real outcome metrics like, let's say, case acceptance matter. But let's come to the case acceptance in itself, because you pointed out, and Dr. John rightly pointed out, people are gaming that as well, because if you only treatment plan that you think the patient is accepting, or you're deleting unaccepted treatment plans, the case acceptance will always look high, right? So for every metric, we try to provide a counter metric that you can look to evaluate to see, is that metric improving as well? Because if the case acceptance is 100% all the time, then potentially there's room for you to improve your, what we call as a treatment planning rate, which is the number of treatments you diagnose. It can be measured in several ways. Because of AI, we can give you that pretty easily, where we say, here is how much AI diagnosed, and here is how much the provider has treatment planned. That's one way of looking at that baseline. And I think, Dr. John, you pointed out in the past, we also look at diagnosis per patient that is coming in and everything. So you can look at that metric as a counter metric to see if the treatment or the case acceptance is really at 100% or 90% and above, people should be encouraged to increase their diagnosis rate. And if that metric is not improving, that's mostly some sort of gaming happening, right? That's the beauty of data, that it can really allow you to do these kind of forensic or auditing kind of things and see if someone, a provider or a hygienist, who has really high case acceptance, what other metric is not improving when this metric is improving, right? And really hone in on from that perspective. That's where AI can really help you establish different sort of metric, even when you don't have a perfect baseline. It can help you derive that baseline in the first place.
Thank you, Balaji. Let's give a hand for our panelist discussion today.